Hey guys, Seán here. Welcome to another episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. This intro is going to be short and sweet, guys. Just a couple of quick things to cover before we get into today's episode with Simon Greene. You guys are going to really love this episode of the podcast. Simon is a running coach who myself and Eric know from back in our days playing American football. He's living in the States at the moment, and he gets into a lot in this podcast about his training towards 64K ultramarathon next month. So best luck with that one, Simon. And he also might be the only person we've had in the podcast who's had a worse experience than us for their very first marathon. So Simon talks about that and a lot more. It's full of knowledge in this episode. You guys are definitely going to get a lot from this episode of podcast. And also, personal shout out to Simon on this one for getting up at like 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning to record this podcast with us with the time zones and all the rest. I'm blaming Eric on how he organised that, but fair play for Simon for doing that. He must have had a big jug of coffee to get through this session because it's roughly an hour long, this podcast, but I promise you guys it's going to be well worth it. Just before we do get into this episode of the podcast, a couple of quick mentions as well. Simon mentions in this podcast a physio that helped him with his training after that first marathon, Body Central Therapy, Derek Burns. So I will have the link in the description to check him out if you guys are in the area and you need a physio. As well as that, then the Any Given Run Day Run Club, that the link for that description will be on Facebook. That's on Facebook, that Run Club. And on that, we've talked about this before, but just to reiterate, it's using that Run Club, it's about people documenting their journeys and just having a community there as much as we can, especially through this lockdown, which hopefully is starting to lift pretty soon. I just got my first run of the year in the Phoenix Park, and I'm just looking around like, there's hope. This is nearly over, guys. So hopefully that's the case, and you start running in groups and all the rest pretty soon. But just in the meantime, that running group is fantastic for people documenting their journeys, and when you see that, you are motivated to train. Like, I know every weekend I'm seeing posts and shout out to Sean, Bobby, and Dara, because every weekend they're talking about their journey and their long runs, and I'm like, I gotta get a long run in as well. And I know Eric feels the same on that. With that said, we also launched our Any Given Training Day Strava Club, so the link for that one is also in the description, and we're going to have challenges on that one in the next couple of weeks and months ahead. Eric said he's going to be heavily involved in doing those kind of challenges. And the thing about Strava, and this may sound vain, but it's just like when you do a run, you see a few likes coming in for the run. It is like, it's a release of endorphins. It's that good feeling of, okay, people are acknowledging your runs and you did a good job. And it's just kind of that little pat in the back. And look, I don't like admitting that, but the fact is we do like getting, we do like receiving compliments and stuff like that. Now, we may be awkward in how we talk about how we like receiving compliments. We do like receiving those compliments every now and again. So we're hoping to build, a nice little group with that as well. So we have that bit of motivation and that kind of extra support and guidance to push ourselves through. So, guys, that's pretty much it. With that said, we're going to get straight into today's podcast with Eric's good friend, Simon Greene. Guys, enjoy. Finally, on today's episode of the podcast, we should have someone that we consider my friend of the podcast because we know each other through American football. But the more I think about it, the more he's somehow closer friends with Eric, because he played offensive lineman just like Eric. They both did a lot better in American football than I did. And then he lives over in America right now. He's a running coach over there, does marathons, ultra marathons, and all the rest. This week's guest on the Any Given Run Day podcast, Simon Greene. Welcome to the show.
My friend Eric and also Seán, you're here too.
Yay!
Good to see you guys.
I don't forgive you for cutting me 17 times on when we used to play football back in the day. But apart from that, Simon, how are you getting on over there?
Yeah, pretty great. It's a good living over here. I've got a house. I'm working from home. The weather's awful right now, but apart from that, it's pretty good.
I do always see that on your Strava. It's like just insane weather conditions. You're going for a run, and it seems to like if we're like, it's raining, we'll go out there. Now, I was only in America for a cup of coffee, literally, and I remember once I was in a thunderstorm, like, oh my god, this is just like the movies. This is unbelievable. But you and Eric were talking about before in the podcast how it's like literally it will decide whether you get out there for a run or not.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, in the summer, because it's so hot, you'll go out in the rain anyway, because you'd be able to wring out your shoes by the time you're done in it, and there's rivers flowing down the street, but you'll still go out because it's, when you're running 25 degrees in pouring rain, it's still 25 degrees, and it's dropped from 35 degrees that it's been all week, so it's a nice breaking, you'll just take it. But the winters here, so I've mentioned to you guys, I'm based in Wisconsin. The winters here are another beast. They're, so let's say February this year was kind of when winter hit. And we had from the 1st of February up until about the 25th of February, the warmest it got was -9. And I went for a run on Super Bowl Sunday. It was -37 Celsius, -37. And I got windburn on my ankle. I was wearing like 2 pairs of shorts and leggings and all sorts of things. And my leggings rolled up just a little bit. And there's a gap along my ankle, and it burned my ankle so badly that I still have a scar from it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the weather here. So the thing is,
I'll never complain about a bad night here again.
With the weather here now, a lot of my running friends, they have a bike or a treadmill or something in the house. When I first moved here, I said to myself, I'm never doing that. I'll never use it. There's no chance I'm going to do it. And just this winter, I said, okay, I think for next winter, I'm just going to go buy a treadmill, or I'm going to buy one of those Swift things that you were talking about in the podcast recently.
Eric. The last episode, the turbo trainer,
yeah, because I want to, and this is something we can talk again about, but I want to get into triathlons. I had been training. I went and was getting swimming lessons right before the pandemic hit, and my plan for last year was to try and do 2 sprints, and it just never happened because of everything that happened. So I'm kind of getting back around to it again, and I've getting the bike out and going for a bit of cycling and stuff. But it's where were we talking about? The weather.
The weather -37 degrees. I'm still on that number. How like that's the way. You do see it on Instagram, people throwing the hot water up in the air, and by the time it gets up there, it's frozen. Probably a stupid question, but do you ever somewhat get used to that? Because like I'm running in, like I think I ran a -2 once over December, and I feel like the way like Roy Keane would give out Premier League footballers having to wear the gloves, and I bring out the gloves and it's -2, and you're an extra -35 degrees on top of that. Like how are you like even stepping outside your front door, let alone go for a run in that?
Yeah, it's, what, in exactly that, you do get used to it. It's the other thing is that the weather here, the cold here is not the same as the cold in Ireland. The cold in Ireland, everybody says it gets into your bones. It's that damp cold. Here it's a very dry cold. So as long as the wind isn't blowing, you're grand. Like you're not going to feel -10 the way you'd feel 4 degrees in Ireland. It's a whole other beast.
I feel a little bit bad about myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll still go out. I'll be wearing my gloves and I'll wear my, I'll wear my gloves. I'll wear something over my face, and I'll put on sunglasses and that kind of stuff, even if it's dark, so that the snow isn't burning my eyes. But, you'll get out because like I said, until the wind comes, it's not as cold. But it was February. It was because it's when the wind picks up. From Ireland. The wind picks up in February, so we had disastrous weather in February along with the cold. So it was just
picking up there on like throwing on different layers of clothing, protect yourself from the runs. I know you from putting on a lot more gear, protect yourself from getting hit by people up and down the country in terms of playing American football. How did you transition from American football? And I didn't know you at the time, but you played offensive lineman. And for those people who don't know what an offensive lineman is, they're the 5 guys whose job is to protect the weak, scrawny quarterback from getting mauled by these massive players on the other side of the field. How did you go from that to long distance running?
It's a good question. So when I was playing American football, I was about 25 kilos heavier. And I don't know if you remember me being that much heavier, but
I don't remember fat you. You don't remember fat me either.
No, I don't. No. But yeah, I was about 25 kilos heavier, and then I started to lose a bit of weight. And then I don't know if you remember Pete and Paul. I was saying to myself, well, I probably can't really play center anymore at this weight. So I was thinking I'll move down to the end. I'll play tight end. And so I said, right, I'll go out and I'll start getting a little bit fitter so I can run faster, so I can catch the ball. And so I started going out and I was doing, a couple of 5Ks a week. And then I was putting on all of my pads and going out into the Phoenix Park and doing 5K in my full pads and helmet, running up and down in the dark so that nobody would see me looking like an idiot. I
would have definitely thrown eggs at you.
Yeah. Actually, do you know what? I've had eggs in Dublin. I've had eggs thrown at me for running in normal clothes. I mean, that's just scumbags in Dublin. But yeah, I just started doing. Was that? Yeah, it was Eric. Eric riding up and down the red line, Lewis, waiting for runners to run by so he can egg them. Not a bit surprised.
Making cakes out of them.
Yeah. And then I just kind of started to run a little bit farther. And then I kept saying to myself, right, 10K is all I'll ever do. And I started running in about 2015, and I'd never done a race. I'd never done it. And then a friend of mine said, why don't we do that 6K, the Kilmainham one that the St. James's does every year? And so I did that, and I kind of caught a little bit of the bug of the race itself. And I said, oh, maybe this is for me. And then a friend of mine, he said that there's a run. I can't even remember the name of it now, but it's a run from Salt Hill to the top of Knocknaree and back again. And he said, come on, we'll go and do it together. It's 15K. And I, at this point, like I said, I had done 10 before my entire life. So I said, right, let's do this. And I ran to the top of the hill and back. And I said, okay, I'm never doing that again. I'm in so much pain. And then we got to the bottom of the hill, and there were, the 5 lads that had done it together. They were like talking about the Dublin half marathon that year. And they said, Simon, you might as well do the half marathon now. It's only an extra 6K. So I said, no, I don't think so. No. Next day I signed up for the half marathon. And yeah, that was kind of it after that. I can't stop now. It's an addiction at this point.
Unbelievable. And you've done the full marathon this stage, haven't you?
The full?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have. Oh, Dublin. Yeah. That was my first one. I broke my foot doing it.
How did you? Huh?
Yeah. I
thought we had a bad time. How did that happen?
Jesus. My first ever marathon. Again, we can get into all these pieces, but you guys know it. Eric, you're always preaching it. Run slow to go fast. Go slow to go fast. Well, I did everything at a tempo pace for my training, and so your body starts to break down because one of the principles from a book I'm reading called The Running Formula talks about how you can only do basically one or the other. It's called ease of maintenance, where you have to get to a good place with one piece before you bring up the other piece. So you build up the volume before you build up the speed. Well, I decided, I'm doing really well at this. 5K is such an easy thing to do. I might as well do 10K. I might as well do all of this at a 4:30 pace. And so I signed up for one of those apps, and the app was telling me, oh, Simon, you're going to do a 3:11 marathon. I said, great. Can't wait for this. Can't wait to tell everybody how easy it is to run a marathon. Anyway, about 6 weeks out, I got patella tendonitis in my right knee from overtraining, and it was painful to walk, let alone to actually go out for a run. So I went to the sports clinic out in Santry, is it? And they said, you got to cut it all out. It's not happening for you. I said, well, I've got a marathon in 6 weeks, and I've raised all this money for motor neurons for it. So I kind of have no choice at this point. I'm just going to have to do it. So your man said, right, well, you can't do any runs. You're just going to have to go to the gym and, work on a bike and get on the cross trainer and that kind of stuff. So I did. I went to the gym and I did the cross trainer and absolutely no running. And I went then to the Marathon Expo in the RDS, and I got some fella was talking about this like sleeve for your knee and how it has this restorative powers because of whatever was in it. I can't remember, copper or something. And so I put it on, and this was Friday before the Sunday. And I went out for a run that evening, my first run in 6 weeks, and I felt great. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to be fine. And so then I started into the marathon. Everything was going well. And then you get to Walkinstown around mile 13.
We know it well.
Yeah.
That's where we started trying to punch the head off each other.
Yeah. We had a couple of Come Jesus meetings there.
Yeah. As you go underneath, they have an arch to tell you you're halfway there. And yeah. Like right then I took a step on my right knee and I felt the pain come shooting through my ankle or my knee, and I thought, this is not good. I'm only halfway through this. So I just kept going, and like I've seen the videos, Seán, of you kind of limping your way over the finish line. That was exactly me. I had to stop at one point, right before you hit right before you hit the Heartbreak Hill, I got to the bottom of it, and one of my coworkers was there with his bike because he was following with a friend of his, and I stopped for a chat with him, and I was almost in tears at this point. I rang my wife, and I said to her, actually, it was a good thing. It was a good thing that she didn't pick up, because I was going to say to her, look, I don't think I could finish this. And it was just her voicemail. And I said, oh, I'm leaving your voicemail. I'm not doing well right now. And I hung up the phone. She wasn't able to pick it up because she was down at the finish line and there was so much noise she wasn't able to hear. And so I just kind of had to hobble my way home. And by the time I got back, I could barely walk on my left foot because I had been putting so much stress on the left foot that the right to stop the pain in the right foot. Yeah. And so I ended up getting a stress fracture on my my fourth metatarsal, and it was like 4 weeks before my wedding, and the only thing that Shannon said to me was, do not turn up to this wedding in a cast. And that was the only thing. Like you're doing your first marathon right before we get into we get married. Just do not turn up in a cast. That is your only requirement here. And I almost nearly did. So.
Okay. And come here. Here's one thing. Me and Seán, I don't look fondly back on that marathon. To be honest, I have the medal, but I look at it and I'm just like, that wasn't a marathon. How do you feel about that? Now that I've heard you say you broke your foot and finished the marathon, I'm like, no, that's a marathon. But
yeah.
Are we wrong? Are we wrong to be looking at the kind of the fight and the failures still finishing in a different way? I don't know. I don't look at it with pride, even though I've done it.
No, I don't. And it was it was a very long time before I was able to get back into like long distance running again. I remember I was out in the south side of Dublin, somewhere around the RDS, because I worked out on the south side, and I remember the feeling came back to me of how, like, in what poor condition I was by the time I reached that spot. And I just said to myself, no, I'm not ready to get back into long distance running again. And I read very soon after that, I read something, and it was basically like, you can't sign up for your next marathon until you're over your previous marathon. And that kind of clicked with me as like, I still have the PTSD from the former one, and until I get past it, it's just not going to happen. So I allowed myself to have that break. And so I did that first one in 2016. I didn't do another one until I moved to the US in 2018. And then I did one, and then I was just back into it again. And a lot of it for me was when I moved to the US, because I used to run on my own in the Phoenix Park all day long, and that was fine. And I would do my runs, and I was thinking, because I had nothing to compare to, I didn't have Strava at the time. I had nothing to compare to. So I just assumed I was just doing great. And then I showed up here in Madison, Wisconsin, where I don't know. It's like everybody gives Americans a lot of shit for being so unfit, but I feel like this must be one of the fittest cities in America, because I showed up, and all of a sudden, like, a casual Saturday run was 17 miles. And jeez. I said to myself, right, well, I'm going to have to build myself up to this. And it was just nothing for these people, like running. If I turned to anybody at home and I said, I'm going to go out and do 16, 17 miles, they give you shit for it. But when here in the US, it just seemed to be nothing to these people. And so I just had to build myself up to that. And then, like, now I'm, running 1,600 miles a year, and, it's all going well. But at the time when I moved there, I was like, no, this is never going to happen for me. I'm just never going to get there.
It is amazing how, sorry, Seán, it's amazing how mindset can change when you're surrounded by people who make it seem like there's nothing.
That's exactly
I probably took the words out of your mouth, Seán.
Yeah, you did.
Like me hanging around with like Austin and the guests that we have had, all my friends. Seán has none, so that's why Seán can't run.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we all know Seán has no friends.
So when you surround yourself with these people, they put that little belief, they take some of that negative out of your brain and go, you can do this. And you're like, yeah, actually I can. It might take me a little while to get up to that level, but I'll get there. It is amazing to see the difference it has made in you over a year. And 1,600 miles a year. Yeah,
that's I hit almost 1,600 miles last year. And the thing is, it was a pandemic. I ran almost no miles with anybody, because from March until I feel like the next time I ran with somebody was a friend of mine was moving to Germany, and I said, look, let's go for a run together before you go. And that was July. So I ran nothing. And then it was only over the winter that I started picking up with a running partner of mine. She and I have been coaching each other through winter because we both have racing goals coming up in April. But yeah, nothing over the thing. It was just, a lot of it was a lot to do with the fact that there's nothing else to do. You know, I don't have to go down to Home Depot on a Saturday and pick out, you know, new kitchens and stuff, because we're not letting people in the house to do the kitchen in the first place. So we just kind of, I got into running a lot more then because of that, I suppose.
You seemed always interested in running, even after your first marathon, talking about reading the running formula and stuff. When you got over there, is that when you became a running coach and got into it even more, or were you a running coach before you went over?
No, I actually became a running coach here. I'm a registered coach with the RRCA, the Road Running Club of America. And when I first moved over here, I was interested in looking in actually getting a running coach because I wanted to restart my long distance running again. And I in researching them, I found that you can actually attend courses. They do courses down in Chicago. And so I signed up for a course, and they sell out so fast that I was on their waiting list for probably 6 or 8 months before I even got it notified that I would be available to do it. And so it ended up being late 2019 before I actually got to attend the course. And then of course we finished that and then right into a pandemic. So been able to take on a couple of clients, which has been great. And I helped somebody go from being able to barely run to the end of their street to doing a half marathon, which I was pretty proud of, as I was my very first client. But it's been, since I moved here, it's all been being shown how sub-average I was by comparison to my peers in Madison really made me kick up a gear with all my running stuff, I think.
Looking at that course, is there anything that you thought you were fixed on running is this way, and you went in there was anything that kind of stood out, like, oh, I never looked at it that way, or this is the biggest misconception I had about running before going into that course?
Well, I mean, do you know what, the running course, when you actually get into it, all of it is, I won't say all of it, like, because there's a lot of, you know, very technical scientific pieces to it that they talk about as well. But a lot of it just makes sense. And a lot of it, if you are an avid runner who likes to read up online about different pieces, a lot of it you'll have picked up yourself and kept it in the back of your head. But it's just actually one thing that that really surprised me was, so VO2 max. Everybody loves to talk about VO2 max. For most runners, it's not an important number unless you're starting to try and get into that athlete. But still, because Strava shows it to us, because Garmin shows it to us, because Suunto shows it to us, we all want to know what our VO2 max is. Something that I found out is that you can work to raise your VO2 max, you know, through tempo running and thresholds and that kind of stuff. But each person has a ceiling that you will never reach. You will never be able to raise that ceiling of your VO2 max. So you might, let's say, for example, Seán, your VO2 max is 49 and you are been working to try and raise that VO2 max, but it just does not seem to be going any higher than that. The likelihood is that you've hit your ceiling and that you'll never be able to go any higher. And the other thing about VO2 max is that once you hit 30, I don't know if either of you are in this club with me.
See you later, Seán.
I'm gonna make ourselves a cup of coffee. You guys talk away.
Yeah. Once you hit 30, you lose about 1 to 2% of your VO2 max every year, and so all across your between 30 and 40, you lose 10% on average of your VO2 max, and so it's learning about that kind of stuff really kind of shocked me.
Like, if you look at a marathon, obviously you've done a fair few marathon stuff at this stage. Like, the average age of someone doing a marathon and doing well would be plus 30. Is that more so interest levels in long distance running, or like if you had like a bunch of 20-year-olds doing running and stuff like that, they'd be elite because their VO2 max that high, or like you said, VO2 max just doesn't come into to endurance running as much as people think it does? I know it's a weird way of phrasing that question.
I mean, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I think a lot of the reasons why people in their mid to late 30s do so well in running, in long distance running particularly, is because they've made all the mistakes. They've gone through all of the difficulties and the hardships. They've tried to do their first marathon at all tempo pace. They've made their mistakes with the nutrition, because, you know, you guys have been speaking about it in your previous podcast. Nutrition isn't an easy thing to dial into. And so, you know, you have to get to that point with that dedication. And whereas you can work from a very young age and, you know, sprint 100 meters, and, you know, you lose that very quickly, because that's all about your fast twitch fibers. And again, things like your VO2 max, where it's working on your anaerobic threshold, where those pieces are things that are built for young people. The pieces that are built for old people, I feel like are just the pieces that, you know, you learn from experience, but you also continue to improve your aerobic abilities at the same time. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Seán is old anyway, I know that much, and he should probably retire next year. That was the first thing I was thinking as you were talking. But
I was thinking that too.
It is. But when you look at other sports, I suppose, when you take running out of it, you look at the lifespan of a professional who is required to do short, sharp stuff. When they start to reach their 30s, they're considered old. They're considered old in their sport. You know, and nobody knows the reasons why. Like some soccer players got to the age of 40 because they have what people call an engine. You know, they have the endurance element. But yeah, I suppose when you look at sports through the ages, sprinters, runners, there is a certain life expectancy on their career. You know, even Usain Bolt, fastest man in the world, he still reached a point in
He's
his
younger
career.
than Seán, isn't he?
A lot of people are, Simon. Thanks, mate.
But that might, and it kind of proves the point that you're saying, that it kind of, I suppose, for people listening, it might be the draw between, like, what we're talking about, this anaerobic threshold for these athletes. You know, there is a certain element that you can't necessarily do. Tom Brady, 40 years of age, he doesn't do a lot of running.
No, he does not.
No,
is that? But you know, and that's why he can keep going the way he is. You know, it's an impressive. It is nice to hear the other side of it and try and relate it back to all sports, every sport that's there. But the endurance sports tends to see people into their late 70s, 80s doing marathons. You know, cycling, stuff that just requires the cycling, I suppose, a little bit more so because less impact onto the body. But it's phenomenal to see and have that understanding that, you know, if you want to get into a sport that's going to last you a lifetime, you know, endurance is a way of looking at it.
Yeah. And they always say, I don't know what it is about, and this is something that I should have looked up before I said this out loud, but there is something to be said about being over 40 and going into like ultra marathons. Because I've done a couple at this point, and you turn up at the start line, and quite often I'd be, you know, I'm 33 at this point. I could be one of the youngest people at the start line at my age. And I did a 50K before the pandemic, and there was about 400 people did it. And I think the average age was late 30s. It was like 39 or something like that. Or it was but there was people in it like 50s and 60s years of age, and they're going out doing 50K like it's nothing. Now they're not doing it fast. Like it was great for me to be able to turn up to a race and come 19th, but which is not going to happen in anything except trail running. But it was just they come and it was 50K over 3,000 meters or something, and like these people are doing it in 6 hours, 6.5 hours. And imagine being 60 years of age and just being able to just bat out 50K like that, like it's nothing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's a lot of mistakes they learn from over the years in running. I do think it's a lot of it is mental, building up that like when you're younger, you're 18, 20 and stuff like that, you've got your guy, your soccer, your rugby, and they probably like the big four. There's a couple of other sports there as well, and then like life gets in the way, where it's college, work and all the rest, and then running kind of comes in because it's something you could do in your own time. And then when you get to the 30s and stuff like that, where, you know, you lose your hair like myself and everything else, sometimes you might lose in your 20s like Eric. And
speak for yourself.
Seán, I've never known you to have hair. Like, let's be real here.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I chose to be like this. I'm more aerodynamic.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, pal. No. But I think people like you said, it just kind of they fall into the running, and all of a sudden they develop a love for it, and it's that kind of competitive. And then after you hit the marathon, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to try and hit a 2-hour marathon. Let's spread it out from there. And some people go ultra marathons, and then some people go more towards triathlons from there. And you seem to be doing both. Like you just said, you hit a 50K, and you also want to get into triathlons as well.
I mean, yeah, I've kind of gone the same way that Eric was talking about, how he got into the idea of an Ironman. It's what I want to do. I want to get there. It's going to be a few years for me. I know that because my swimming is very poor. I didn't learn how to swim as a child. I taught myself how to swim, and I don't mind swimming in the open ocean. But I kind of just got to a point where I said, right, I need to be efficient at this, because there's no way that I'm going to be able to swim for 45 minutes or an hour. And just flopping around the way I do. So I know it's going to take probably a year of swimming lessons before I get to that point. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, I think I got to a point where I'm too old for team sports. And also, the only person you're relying on at this stage is yourself to go out and do it. Like Seán, you were with me during our last year at the American football, like trying to get 16 lads to show up to training and thinking that's a really good day it's not good when you need to field a team of 22 on a Sunday,
I was thinking that as you were going through that was the exact same thing going through my mind. And look, people have different reasons for turning up as well. It's hard to get so many people on the same page to what you want out of that training session. And it's who am I to judge? Some people just want to have the crack, play with the ball, or just turn up on game days and hope for the best. I don't mean that to put anyone down, but that obviously was happening when we had 16's very generous for our training sessions, when you need 30 lads to have on a football team. But that's not here nor there. To change gear,
that as well though, just on the, it is an individual sport, but as people haven't copped on by now, like us talking to each other about doing individual sports makes us a team. We're picking up tips and tricks from you. Me and Seán are talking about, oh, that was awful, I didn't get out there today, or I'm really feeling bad. It's the same way, a team is kind of picking you up, and that motivation of the run club or whatever is you're seeing people getting out and even just doing their 5K. That person that does their 5K every day is better than the likes of Simon who goes and does a 20-mile one. Those consistent people are the ones that drive the rest of the team who are watching. And as me and Seán always say, going to the start line of these races, probably, Simon, you probably noticed, you're probably even on your own going up to all these races. So it's actually quite a lonely feeling, because when I did the triathlons, I had some other people doing them with me. So we'd all drive together, we'd set up the bikes together, and then we'd arrive to the start line together. And then once the gun goes, then you're on your own. Then it's okay. I've been here before. I've trained for this. I've done the swim. And then when the race is over, you all meet up and discuss how the team performed. How did you do? How did I? It is an individual sport. It absolutely is when the gun goes. But I think if you surround yourself with the right people, it can be a fantastic team experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. And actually on that point, lads, I mean, I'm sure I'm echoing what you've heard from the Facebook group and all the lads who listen to the podcast. But, Irish people, I feel like we don't have the same backing that you get in America, where, people will come and celebrate you for the opening of an envelope. Whereas in Ireland, and you were saying this, Eric, one of the days, is like people can kind of get a bit of down on you because you're, trying to better yourself sometimes. But the run group seems to have this very positive attitude to it, no matter what. Everybody's getting behind each other, whether that's a person going out and doing their first 5K, or whether that's your pal Dara who's going to go out and do 125 kilometers. And, everybody is, no matter what ability, and everybody is doing great. And you have provided that for people. And you've also, with this podcast, you provided people with a realization that you can hate running and still do running. And you can have really, really bad days where you go and you try to box the head off each other while you're trying to do a run. Or in my case, go and break your foot and then still want to go and do running. Like it's never perfect for everybody. So I mean, I think it's very much appreciated by me and definitely by the lads. So just want to say, well done on that, and for bringing what is now a team and a community together.
Thanks very much. It is nice. It is why we started, and as it grows, it is nice to see so many people getting out for the first runs. And like you said, with that person you coached for the first marathon, half marathon, it's we get satisfaction out of watching everyone else succeed. And I don't think people realize that, and there is a lot of satisfaction to be gained for everyone involved to see someone who started on their first 5K complete their first 5K. It's a phenomenal journey to watch someone transition and fall in love with the hate. To be honest, it's the nicest way to put it.
Yeah.
So from making mistakes, and this is one thing that we get asked a lot of times, and Seán probably gets asked a lot with his coaching. You've made a lot of mistakes, but you've also now done the coaching course.
With my life, or
no? You're friends with me and Seán. Well, just me, but that's one mistake.
I know Seán.
That was your first mistake.
Do you think that the coaching has helped you to be a better runner, or do you think it's the experiences of just going out and running that has made you a better runner?
I think
it's
that
probably a bit of both, but yeah.
The coach. So by the time I got around to the coaching, I feel like I had a pretty good grasp on it. The coaching has helped me to be a better runner because it has helped me to remove the ego from my runs. Like, I don't know if how closely you watch my Strava, but over the past year or so, everything has slowed down a lot. And it's been very purposeful, because and I'll get into it in a second, but I'm about to do a 64K run in a couple of weeks, and I tried to do it last year, and I tried to do it last year at a 450 pace and burnt out at mile 30 and like cramps and all sorts of stuff. And so, yeah. But it helped me remove the ego, because, when you go out into the Phoenix Park, and I keep saying Phoenix Park because I lived next to the park when I was living in Dublin. When you go out into the park and there's all these people that are running really fast, you think to yourself, well, I have to run faster than them, because otherwise I'm not doing well as a runner. And when you go and you realize that, one, not everybody is trying for the same goal as you are, but two, there are so many different types of runs, and there's different ways to do it, that if you are doing all of your runs fast, you're just going to kill yourself, and you're going to break down, and you're going to be ended. So and a lot of that really has come from learning more and reading more about about how you should be running and how you should be training as a runner, and also from the coaching as well.
It is funny you say that, because a few of our clients we've put onto the heart rate based training, trying to keep their heart rate on the slow runs down to the 140, trying to transition their bodies into the endurance zone, because their goals are marathon based, but they equally want to run fast. So they're doing a split between intervals and heart rate training, which is always a nice mix. But it's amazing how frustrated everyone is with the 140 beats per minute, and the fact that they have to walk at certain points. I even had to do it. I think it took me 35 minutes to do a 5K the other night, because I was like, right, it's starting to get into long distance season. It's time to go back into the endurance zone. And Seán will tell you, a 5K at 4:20, I would bang out easy enough. It would be tired after it, but I wouldn't bat an eyelid. But like a 36-minute 5K hurts your soul.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, like I said, it hurts your pride and your ego.
Yeah. It's always Strava, like, geez. And then the next person you scroll down, they do a 5K in 25 minutes. You're kind of like, that they're after doing 10 minutes faster than me. And it does get you ego wise. Like I'm still trying to wrestle with running my long runs as a proper slow down. It's probably 5:30, 5:45 pace it should be. And sometimes I'm hitting close to 5. And afterwards I'm like, I got a half decent time. Then I'm like, didn't really work towards what my overall goals should be in my training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you'll see it, because I still do get into it when I'm on my runs themselves. You'll I'm totally fine with my pace, but when I go to post it on Strava, and I think Strava has, social media has a lot to say for itself, but when I go to post it on Strava, I always worry that, oh shit, people are going to think that I'm running really slow because I've lost it or whatever. So I might post, oh, this was a really hilly run or that kind of stuff, just so that people are, maybe they'll actually go in and see, oh, I did a huge amount of elevation in this run, and then at least won't be judging me for it. But you shouldn't feel like that, because like we've talked about it, there should not be an ego in it, but it lives there. But thankfully I've been able to remove it from my runs. But I've not yet removed it from my posting it online yet. So that's a future Simon goal.
Well, running a 64K is going to help that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I think for me as well, I think we spoke about consistency, and I people get bogged down in pacing. But I think the most important thing with anything is consistency. And I don't care what people see on my Strava. I don't care if it's a walk they see, but they're seeing something. And if they go to the day before, they'll see another thing. And if they go to the day before that, they'll see something else as well. So if anyone wants to question pace now, I'm like, okay, well, how was your last 7 days? Like I'm not training. Now, obviously the last week with transitions with work and stuff, it hasn't been great. Training hasn't been good, and we're readjusting a couple of things for myself. But my point is, where was I going with that? It was pretty much that, like, if you're consistent, I train to train tomorrow. I'm not training to burn myself out so I can't train until Thursday. There needs to be that level. I need to be on the bike today. I need to be doing yoga tomorrow. I need to be, and I think if you're solid with your plan and your goals, then what other people see doesn't matter. It's a track for you so that you can look at April and go, right, how was the start of the month to how was the same run I did in the start of May? How was my heart rate over those same hills? How am I managing my pace over the hills? And it's, if you let your ego go and actually trust in what you're doing, and we say it each week, it is, you will see phenomenal differences in yourself and in the pace that you now manage over certain heart rates. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I 100% agree with you on that. It's all about you remove the ego, and then you work for, like you said, you work for tomorrow. I mean, once you can remove that, because if you don't remove the ego from your run, and you did really well on, let's say, a big hill that you did it on Monday, and you did a really good job on it. And if you're not removing that ego from that run, and you're going to push yourself when you shouldn't be, because you're not working, like you said, working for tomorrow, you could easily get injured doing that kind of stuff. So no, I echo it exactly. You're bang on there.
You talked about a second ago, not a second ago, actually near the start of it, that book again, the running formula. The way you're talking about that, it sounds like it was based on periodization for your runs in terms of, blocking them out, going fast here for a certain period of time, then slower, going long distance. Is that the way you've blocked out your year now? You do a 64K run in a couple of weeks. What then are you going to work more on speed afterwards, or is it just endurance for the rest of the year? Like, well, obviously the weather probably comes to play as well.
The weather definitely comes into play, but I blocked my years, and in fact I blocked this year into 3 what we call mesocycles. Blocks of these are my mesocycles are going to be for my 64K. I've got a 50K race in August or end of September. Then I'm going to plan for a mesocycle in midsummer so I can try and get something in there. It's going to be shorter because it's going to be too hot here. It'll probably be something fast. Maybe I'll try for a faster 10K or something. But basically how it works is you get your block, and within that you have like 4 mesocycles where you have like 3 weeks each, followed by recovery, followed by your 3 weeks, and then followed by recovery week, followed by 3 weeks. And basically how it works, or the idea of it is that your rate of achievement within your within that block, you eventually get to a point where you plateau. So right. You have to add a new stress. And so you take the week break and you move on to the next thing. So in your first block, for example, you might be doing tempo run, maybe some fartleks, long run, that kind of thing. And then you might do that for your first 3 weeks. And you're maybe, if you were to do, instead of the tempo, maybe if you're doing like sprints on a Monday, right? And your sprints are 400 meters at a 5K pace. Well, then the following block, you should be doing maybe 800 meters at a 10K pace, because you need to introduce a new stress all the time. Otherwise your body's just going to say, no, we're done. So I've blocked out my year like that, where I'm going to have, and like I said, I haven't figured out what my middle one is going to be yet, but I've blocked out my year like that so that I can train to be at the positions whenever I need to. And it takes a little bit of organization, which I'm not typically a very organized person. But that's kind of what I've decided to do this year anyway. Did that answer your question? I feel like I got
I 100% answer the question. A personal question, not personal question, but just I suppose from my background, would you do much strength training on top of that, or is it mostly running? Lost connection. No,
I was going through a tunnel there. Sorry, I didn't hear you. No, I don't. I have to admit, I'm not great for the old strength training.
But it works for you.
It does. I'll do a lot of stretching, and I have a weight band, and I'll do a lot of leg work. I'll do some crab walks, and I'll do shuffles, and I'll do all that kind of stuff. I do a lot of like bounding and strides and that kind of stuff. And I would always recommend people in their running to introduce strides at the end of long runs, and because that definitely helps with elasticity is the wrong word, but I'm thinking of Tom Brady when I say it. But
pliability.
Pliability. It definitely helps with a lot of that. But I don't do much strength work, and I think I used to do it a lot when I was living in Dublin, and I didn't enjoy it, but I did it because I needed it and part of recovery because I tore my adductor longus tendon a few years back. But I met the group of runners that I ran with pre-pandemic that, like I said, were these people who would run 17, 20 miles without a care. And they all kind of made me realize that I am and I think a lot of runners I am very lazy. And so I will go out, I'd be happy to go out and run in a straight line for all day long, but don't make me run sideways and don't make me get down and do a push-up afterwards, because neither of those are going to happen for me. And so I don't know if a lot of your clients or your listeners are like that, but I find that runners have awful hamstrings, and runners have very weak cores because we're all the same. We're all very lazy people. We say, right, well, I went out and I burned 1,500 calories. So it's the same as doing strength training, right? And really it's the opposite. It's terrible what I do. What I use as my excuse is that because I do so much elevation living here and because I live next to the Ice Age Trail. It's a very long trail that runs right across Wisconsin. Is about 2,000 miles, and I live next to that, and so I do a lot of running on it, and I feel like that definitely helps work towards my lower body strength. But again, my core there's nothing there, so it's leading toward injury, and once I get that injury, I'll definitely start working on it again. But I'm lazy, so we'll see.
But at the same time, you're doing different bounds and crab work and hill work as well. Like, I mean, obviously that's something that works for you, and not necessarily like. I find that a lot of people do, they say they do core work and they do sit-ups and they might throw in the odd plank and stuff like that. And it might translate onto running, and then again, it might not. There's like, I was reading a couple of different studies now recently, actually, just from my college course, and there's actually not that much of a transfer as much as I thought it was. Kind of like I had to read it twice, between doing core exercises and getting better at running. But it sounds like if you're mixing up your different types of runs and you're throwing in your bounds, stuff like that, it's at the moment, it's clearly working for you, and touch wood, you're not going to get injured. If you're able to do a 64K in a couple of weeks and not get injured, you're obviously doing something right.
I mean, we'll see if I could do a 64K in a couple of weeks. But for me, it's going well, at least. But I know. So like I said, a few years back, I tore my adductor longus. And when I went to the physio about it, they said to me, well, the reason you've done it is because you've got a very weak core and you're basically everything is out of alignment. So I worked on it from there. And that was definitely part of it. He also told me, this is a funny fuck you to this guy, but he told me that I would never run a marathon again. So fuck you. Exactly. I'm not going to name the physio. He is one of the more well-known physios in Dublin. And he had told me that the way I was and the kind of tear that I had, and he was like, you're a pretty, he had some less than nice things to say about what kind of runner I was. And he had decided that I would never run a marathon again. And then I went to him a couple of times, and I was kind of like, well, actually, I don't need this rudeness in my life. So I went elsewhere, and I went to this fella. He does a thing called anatomy in motion. And I actually am, as I speak now, I'm actually going to send you the link, because I find this is a plug for a man who is not sponsoring me, but I went to him, and after I went to him for one session. He basically helped me, realign my body through manipulating my feet, but most of it was through these really simple exercises to help me wake up my glutes. Mm-hmm. I managed to take minutes off my 5K, my 10K time, my half marathon time. My first marathon, I told you, it fell apart, and my second marathon, I came around, I was able to take 25 minutes off it. So, it's this guy, and like I said, not a sponsor of this show, but his work is amazing, and I definitely would recommend, because it's not one of those ones where you go to him and you have to keep paying him money to go again. I've only seen this fella. I've been to him 4 times, and one of them was remote while I was here because I was having some trouble with some knee issues, and it's been fantastic. It has changed my entire running career, I suppose.
Brilliant.
Look, we don't mind mentioning people, because, as we said, this is for other runners to try and find the best. It's a community in itself that passes information. So we don't take any payments. We don't care who you name. So it's
work away.
We don't care if you want to shame the other one either. We're rich.
I find out with some physios, I mean, it depends on how they got into that profession. Like, some people have gone there, like I've had lower back issues, and they're like, do you deadlift? I'm like, nah, at the moment they're like, don't deadlift. And they'd have like, you have to do this. I mean, that kind of Pilates and stuff, and that's it. And be same with running. Like I've been told, I've been told you'll never do a sit up again. I'm like, what? It's like, nah, you're done. If you do a sit up, you're gonna blow out your back again. I'm like, okay, I need to go to another physio. I'm getting a second opinion on this right now. Yeah. And that's what it is. But yeah, no, feel free to plug away, especially if they help you with your getting back into running, what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I mean, his name is Derek Byrne. Derek Byrne, Anatomy and Motion is his practice. But yeah, no, exactly what you were saying, Seán. I went to one fella who told me that I had one leg longer than the other. I went to one fella who told me that it wasn't that I had one leg longer than the other. He told me that I had 1 foot bigger than the other. Then this fella who told me that I had, I was never going to run a marathon again, all sorts of stuff. So, you just got, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to find what works for you. But this lad was good people for me.
Absolutely. And we'll put it in the show notes, and we'll leave a link, and recommended by Simon. He might even get back onto us and give us a discount. Everyone is listening.
He might.
This is great. We're working here. But Simon, I suppose we're getting close to wrapping up. We're aware we've got you up at the early hours of the morning, but I suppose, given it all, and the one thing we ask everyone each week is, someone is starting new, we're getting into running, or we're getting into triathlons, or whatever it is, what's the advice you would give to someone that was starting out on their journey today?
I mean, I've got so much advice, but and most of my advice is going to be from mistakes that I've made. But I would say, don't do too much too soon. And that goes for not only the person who's starting at, not being able to run to the end of the street and back. Eric, you were saying me when you started, you couldn't run 200 meters, but I was the same. I used to try and run in the Phoenix Park, and I couldn't make it to the first roundabout before I was gassed. Don't do too much too soon. Just, walk and run. And you'll eventually your body just kind of kicks in, your breathing figures itself out. That's for the early people. But like I said, for the people who are doing 5K, 10K, half marathon, don't do too much too soon. If you push yourself too hard, you'll get injured. Your body changes aerobically much faster than your muscles and your bones are able to do. So it takes a while for your body to be able to say, I can run a marathon, whereas your lungs might be saying, yeah, let's go and do one tomorrow. So, just ease yourself into it, and just make sure that you're not exactly like Eric said, you're leaving enough for tomorrow.
Pretty sound advice, Jack. I can't top that. Actually, I'd be like, yeah, Seán, I wish I had that advice a couple of years ago, because I've made all those mistakes as well. Too much too soon, and injuries and everything else goes with it.
Also, don't try to train for a marathon at a tempo pace. That is absolutely terrible advice.
No one says that.
Seán, you said it at the beginning of this. You told everybody.
No, but I mean, in general, not in this podcast recently. Like even starting that last year, that's something that's only clicked with me in the last year or two. Is that like way too many of my runs were tempo runs. It's like slow the hell down. Even when Eric's like go slow to go fast, it's like yeah, no, I'm gonna do Bulgarian split squats along with tempo runs and prove you wrong. I was wrong. Yeah,
I have a pace calculator in the back of my book that shows you basically if you want to run a marathon, here's your marathon training pace. And it's usually about 60 to 90 seconds per mile slower than what you should be expecting to run your marathon at. And so any of your long runs, you should be running at that much slower because your body is able to pick that back up again. It's no problem. You have to get all that time in your legs. You have to be in a good place aerobically. And also you have to strengthen your bones and your muscles. And you have to help to improve the blood flow by doing all of these slow miles. It's not just a thing people say, there's scientific evidence behind it.
Yeah. And people think I'm crazy telling them to run slow to go fast. But look, here we are. You've heard it.
Yeah. And actually, yeah, if people want more information on that, I would definitely recommend going to read The Running Formula by Jack Daniels. It's a great book. He has got 7 training principles that I mentioned one or two of them at the beginning, but it's worth its weight in gold. And I found it right before we came on here. I found it for $4 on Amazon. So I might have been a secondhand version, but $4 I think is something that most people can pay for at this point.
Absolutely,
I have that book.
Definitely.
You do?
Yeah, I got that book. I did a endurance course there 2 years ago, and then the book was so good they handed it out, and your man was like, "Look, you have the book, everything you need's in the book, but please stick around for the rest of the day."
Yeah,
and that was it. I was looking at the book and he's talking. I could save myself 6-7 hours right now if I just walked out right now and read that book. But a lot of the stuff that I've learned running the last year has gone from the running formula by Jack Daniels. So
yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He's coached hundreds of people to national titles in NCAA. Like he knows what he's doing. So I definitely, like, there are definitely pieces in it where you look at it and you say to yourself, that sounds a bit counterintuitive to the rest of the points you're making, but I'd say 95% of it I'm all on board with.
Yeah, there's pretty sound logic behind it, and there's not too much kind of, like, I read some other books and stuff, I'm like, ooh, don't force this barefoot running thing on me and stuff like that. Whereas it just seems to be a more logical approach to what he's talking about.
Yeah, and going back to my earlier point, if you are a person who likes to read up on running and do your research as you go through these things, a lot of it's going to make sense, but you're able to put it together as a single unit is definitely helpful, and have it, as a coherent thought within your mind.
Unbelievable. Well, Simon, it's been great having you on the podcast, despite the fact that Eric's your friend. I want to say thank you for being on the podcast. Any parting words before we wrap this up?
Oh, I actually forgot. I kept saying I'm going to allude to it, and I don't want to annoy people by not actually talking about it. So there's a trail in Wisconsin here. It runs from a town called Dodgeville to Madison, and it's 40 miles long. And second weekend in May, it's 64K. That's the run I'm going to do. I tried to do it last year. I tried to do it in the dead heat of July, and like I said, I cramped out. And so the two things I had to do was better hydrate, and also, like I said, remove my ego from my runs, because I did 50K. It was like 4:15. Was my 50K time, but I was dead. I had nothing left in the tank. So this time is just going to be nice and slow. Just going to do it as long as it takes, as much of it as I have to walk. But yeah, second weekend of May, the Saturday, which is I think the 7th or the 8th or something like that, is the date for that. So
well, people
are looking at my Strava.
Yeah, we might even be in touch with you afterwards and find out how you get on, because we have full faith it's going to be a good one for you this time.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Unreal. Thanks a million, Simon.
What's that?
I said we will be rooting for you anyway.
Cheers.
Cheers, Simon. Thanks for being on this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. I really can't top going for a 40-mile run after that one, so we're going to wrap it up right there for myself and Eric. Feel too bad. Simon, thanks again for being on this week's episode of the podcast. Eric, whatever. Guys, that's it from the three of us. Take care.
Thanks, friend, and Seán.
Bye.